The Galactic Council had mapped every corner of known space. They had billions of worlds, documented trillions of species, and built an empire that stretched across 100,000 star systems. For 12 million years, they believed they understood the universe. They believed they were its masters. They were wrong. Ambassador of the stood before the great viewing window of the council citadel. His 4 eyes watched the endless stars with growing unease. The message had arrived 3 rotations ago from the Outer Rim exploration fleet. Scout vessels had detected something at the very edge of the galaxy, in a region so distant that light itself seemed reluctant to travel there. They had found a civilization. They had found humanity. The council chamber buzzed with confusion and disbelief. No species had ever developed in the outer darkness. The radiation storms alone should have killed any organic life. The cold emptiness between galaxies offered nothing but death. Yet the scout vessels had recorded impossible things. Cities floating in the void. Ships that moved without engines. Beings that looked fragile but radiated an energy signature that made the sensors scream warnings. High Chancellor of the Collective slammed his armored fist against the ancient stone table. He demanded answers. How had these creatures survived where survival was impossible? The science ministers had no explanations. The military commanders had no strategies. The religious leaders whispered prayers to gods they suddenly doubted. Something was very wrong with everything they thought they knew. The council voted to send a diplomatic mission. Ambassador was chosen to lead it. He was the oldest and among them, a being who had negotiated peace between warring empires and brought harmony to fractured worlds. If anyone could understand these strange creatures from the edge of existence, it would be him. He accepted the mission with a heavy heart. Something in his ancient bones told him that this journey would change everything. The diplomatic fleet traveled for months through increasingly empty space. Stars became rare. Galaxies appeared only as distant smudges of light. The crew grew nervous and quiet. They were moving beyond the boundaries of everything familiar, into a realm that their ancestors had feared since the dawn of their civilization. The navigation system struggled to find reference points. The communication arrays lost contact with home. They were truly alone. Then they saw it. Rising from the darkness like a dream made solid, a structure appeared that all logic. It was a station, but calling it that felt like an insult. The thing stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that seemed almost musical. Smaller vessels moved around it like insects around a hive, each one moving with perfect coordination without any visible communication. Ambassador ordered the fleet to hold position. He transmitted the universal greeting signals that every known species understood. For long moments, nothing happened. Then a response came through, not in radio waves or quantum pulses, but directly into their minds. The voice was calm, warm, and impossibly vast. It welcomed them to the station of first light. It invited them to come aboard. It promised that no harm would come to them. The docking procedure was smooth and effortless. Invisible forces guided their ships into perfectly sized bays. The atmosphere inside was comfortable for all species present, adjusting in real time as they moved through corridors that seemed to grow and reshape themselves. Everything about this place spoke of technology so advanced that it appeared magical. The Galactic Council considered themselves the pinnacle of development, now understood how an insect might feel when discovering the cities of giants. The humans were waiting for them in a great hall, had expected monsters or gods, but what he saw appeared almost disappointingly ordinary. They were soft creatures with delicate skin and fragile bones. Their bodies showed no natural weapons, no armor, no obvious adaptations for survival. They wore simple clothing and smiled with genuine warmth. An elderly female stepped forward and introduced herself as speaker. She apologized for the informal setting and hoped the journey had not been too difficult. Struggled to understand what he was seeing. These beings looked like they should have gone extinct millions of years ago. They had no claws, no venom, no telepathic defenses. Their senses seemed limited compared to most species. Yet here they stood, masters of technology that made the Council's greatest achievements look like primitive tools. He asked the question that burned in his mind. How had they survived? How had they come to be here at the edge of all things? Speaker's smile faded into something more serious. She explained that humans had not always lived at the galaxy's edge. Long ago, they had emerged on a small blue world near the galactic center. They had developed slowly, struggling against their own nature as much as against external threats. They had built civilizations that rose and fell. They had created art and science and philosophy. They had reached for the stars with hope in their hearts. Then they had discovered that they were not alone. The galaxy teemed with life, with intelligence, with civilizations far older and more powerful than their own. Humanity had celebrated at first. They had dreamed of friendship and cooperation with their cosmic neighbors. They had sent messages of peace into the void and waited eagerly for responses. The responses came, but they brought no friendship. They brought only death. Felt a chill run through his body as continued. The first contact had been with the Empire, a civilization that had ruled their sector for 3 million years. They had seen humanity as vermin, as pests to be exterminated before they could spread. They had attacked without warning and without mercy. Human cities burned. Human populations were slaughtered. Human culture was erased wherever it was found. They had intended to wipe humanity from existence entirely. But humanity did not die. Despite their soft bodies and their limited senses, they possessed something that they had never encountered before. They possessed an absolute refusal to surrender. Every human who fell was mourned, but every survivor fought harder. They learned the technology and improved it. They studied tactics and found weaknesses. They turned their own fragility into an advantage, becoming unpredictable and creative in ways that no other species had ever managed. The war lasted 300 years. When it ended, the empire was gone. Not conquered, not absorbed, but completely erased. Humanity had discovered something terrible about themselves during that conflict. They had learned that their capacity for destruction was limitless when properly motivated. They had become weapons, and weapons do not easily become tools again. Other empires had seen what humanity did to them. They formed alliances against the newcomers. They attacked with combined fleets and coordinated strategies. They believed that numbers and experience would triumph over fury and desperation. They were wrong again. Each war taught humanity new lessons. Each conflict forged them into something harder and sharper. They stopped trying to make friends. They focused only on survival. Speaker paused to let her words sink in. She explained that after 2,000 years of constant warfare, humanity had made a decision. They looked at what they had become and felt ashamed. They had started as dreamers and poets, as lovers of beauty and seekers of truth. War had transformed them into monsters that other monsters feared. They did not want to be monsters anymore. They chose to leave. The Great Migration took 500 years. Humanity gathered everything they had built and every person who remained. They turned their backs on the galaxy that had rejected them and headed toward the one place no one would follow, the edge of existence, the outer darkness, the void where nothing should survive. They would build a new home there, far from the violence and hatred that had defined their relationship with the rest of intelligent life. Asked how they had survived in such a harsh environment. Smiled again, but this time there was a hint of pride in her expression. She explained that humans were remarkably good at adapting. Where others saw impossible conditions, humans saw challenges to overcome. They had developed technologies that drew energy from the cosmic background radiation itself. They had created habitats that could sustain life indefinitely without external resources. They had become something new, something that belonged to the darkness between galaxies rather than to the light. 12,000 years had passed since the migration. In that time, humanity had grown and changed in ways that description. They had unlocked secrets of physics that the Galactic Council had never imagined. They had expanded enhanced their minds, and developed abilities that seemed supernatural. They had become what they always had the potential to become, but what the constant warfare had prevented. They had become builders and creators once more. Ambassador asked the question that he dreaded. Would humanity return? Would they seek revenge for what had been done to them so long ago? Would they use their impossible technology to punish the descendants of those who had tried to destroy them? The hall grew very quiet as everyone waited for the answer. Speaker shook her head slowly. She explained that humanity had moved beyond revenge. The wars were ancient history now, studied by scholars but not felt by living hearts. The species that had attacked humanity were long gone, replaced by new civilizations that bore no responsibility for crimes committed millions of years before. Humanity had no interest in burning the heavens for the sake of settling old scores. But the revelation itself would burn the heavens regardless. His voice became gentle as she explained what would happen next. The Galactic Council believed itself supreme. They believed their technology was the highest achievement possible, their understanding of the universe complete and final. The discovery of humanity would shatter that belief utterly. It would prove that everything they knew was just the beginning, that the universe held mysteries far greater than they had imagined. Some civilizations would embrace this revelation with joy. They would reach out to humanity seeking knowledge and friendship. These species would find humanity willing and eager to share what they had learned. Others would react with fear and hostility. They would see humanity as a threat that must be destroyed before it grew any stronger. These species would discover that 12,000 years of peace had not made humanity forget how to defend themselves. The choice belonged to the Galactic Council. They could welcome humanity back into the community of intelligent life, or they could reject them once more. Hoped they would choose wisdom. She hoped they had evolved beyond the fear and hatred that had driven their ancestors. She hoped the heavens would burn with new understanding rather than new wars. But she acknowledged that hope alone changed nothing. Actions mattered. Decisions mattered. What would the Council decide? Ambassador returned to his ship with his mind reeling. He composed his report during the long journey home, choosing every word carefully. He knew that this message would reshape history. He knew that nothing would ever be the same. The galaxy had believed itself alone at the top of existence. Now it knew that humanity waited at the edge, watching with patient eyes and technology that made their greatest weapons look like children's toys. The revelation burned through the Galactic Council like fire through dry grass. Fear and wonder mixed in equal measure. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for diplomatic outreach. Religious orders declared humanity either blessed or cursed depending on their traditions. Scientists abandoned their previous research to study the impossible technologies that the diplomatic mission had recorded. In the end, the Council voted for peace. It was not a unanimous decision, and it was not made from pure goodness of heart. They chose peace because they understood the alternative. They had seen what humanity could do when pushed to war. They had no desire to learn those lessons firsthand. Better to share the universe with these strange creatures from the outer darkness than to give them reasons to return with fire in their eyes. Humanity accepted the offer of peace with quiet satisfaction. They began sharing knowledge slowly, carefully, ensuring that each gift was understood before the next was given. They helped younger species avoid the mistakes they had made. They told their stories honestly, hiding neither their triumphs nor their shames. They became teachers instead of warriors, guides instead of conquerors. The heavens did burn, but not with destruction. They burned with transformation. Old certainties died and new possibilities were born. The galaxy that had once tried to exterminate humanity now looked to them for wisdom. The creatures who had fled to the edge of existence now stood at the center of a new era. And somewhere in the outer darkness, the children of Earth looked at what they had built and finally allowed themselves to feel something they had themselves for. They felt hope.